She turned 90 twice, and no one could explain why. The first celebration felt final. Candles crowded the cake. Voices trembled as they sang. Everyone believed this was the closing chapter. But 10 years later, they gathered again. Same woman, same calm smile, different disbelief. Because somehow she had reached 90 twice. To understand why this story matters now, we need to examine how we measure age. Not in years lived, but in years expected. Modern life teaches us to treat milestones like limits. Retirement, decline, the quiet narrowing of possibility. And yet, her life refused to follow that script. She did not chase youth. She did not deny time. She acknowledged every year without surrendering to it. Aging for her was not a fall. It was a continuation. At first, nothing about her life appeared extraordinary. She lived in the same home for decades. She kept familiar routines. Mornings unfolded slowly. Evenings ended early. Nothing suggested defiance. Doctors marked her chart with cautious optimism. Strong for her age. Sharp for her age. Mobile for her age. Always the comparison. Always the expectation of decline. Family members noticed subtle shifts. Not loss. Adaptation. She simplified but never withdrew. She rested more, but remained curious. Time adjusted around her, not against her. Then came the second celebration. 90, again. This time, silence filled the room before applause. Because no one knew what to say, a milestone had repeated itself. And repetition was never supposed to happen. That was when the questions began. Not how old she was, but how she was still here, and what her life was quietly revealing about time itself. This was only the opening of the mystery. After the second celebration, attention shifted, not toward her health, but toward her rhythm. People began to notice how she moved through time. She no longer marked years as progress or loss. They were simply markers, like seasons returning without surprise. Age did not announce itself in her posture. It revealed itself in adjustment. Her days were smaller, but fuller. She chose carefully where to place energy. She stopped rushing, stopped apologizing for rest, stopped measuring life by productivity. Doctors searched for explanations. They reviewed history. They compared records. They found no anomaly large enough to justify the outcome. No dramatic survival story. No near-death reversal. Instead, they found consistency, stable routines, low emotional turbulence, a quiet acceptance of change. Nothing exciting, nothing marketable. What unsettled them was not her strength. It was her resilience to expectation. She never fought aging. She refused to argue with it. She simply adapted faster than decline arrived. Family members felt the tension. They had prepared for grief once. They were not prepared to do it again. Each additional year carried gratitude, but also uncertainty. How do you plan for a future that keeps extending itself? Friends began to fade away. Names disappeared from memory. Not hers. The world around her thinned. And yet, she remained anchored. This was where conflict began to form. Not in the body, but in perception. People expected frailty. They expected withdrawal. They expected her world to shrink. But instead, her life narrowed with intention, not loss. The paradox was subtle. Living longer did not expand her world. It refined it, and that refinement made time feel abundant, not scarce. Still, something was approaching. Because repeating a milestone once is surprising. Repeating it again challenges belief. And belief, when challenged, demands explanation. The real tension emerged when decline finally appeared. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gently, like a question whispered too late to ignore. Her steps slowed further. Her memory softened at the edges. Nothing alarming, nothing urgent, yet everyone waited for collapse. It never came. Instead, something unexpected happened. She adjusted again. She let go of what no longer fit. She accepted help without surrendering control. Where others resisted loss, she reorganized life around it. This is where expectation broke. Aging was supposed to be a straight descent, but her life moved sideways, around obstacles, through adaptation. Doctors realized they were watching something rare, not extended youth, but extended coherence. Her systems did not fight time. They cooperated with it. Emotionally, this was a peak, because the people around her had to confront their own fear. Fear of becoming irrelevant, fear of slowing down, fear of needing others. She became a mirror, not a longevity, but a surrender without defeat, of letting go without disappearing. The paradox sharpened. What kept her present was not strength, it was flexibility. When effort failed, she shifted. When memory slipped, she laughed. When the world narrowed, she focused. This was the insight approaching its climax, because her second 90 was not a fluke. It was a consequence of rhythm, of acceptance, of not fighting the current when it could be followed. And as her days continued, quieter but intact, one truth became impossible to ignore. Longevity was not about resisting age. It was about adapting faster than fear. The final realization was close. The realization arrived without ceremony, no announcement, no final lesson spoken out loud. Her life did not extend because she refused to age. It extended because she refused to break. When time asked her to change, she did, again and again. Turning 90 twice was never the miracle. The miracle was coherence, staying intact as the world slowly rearranged itself around her, remaining present while letting pieces go. Aging did not defeat her. It negotiated with her, and she listened. This is why her story matters now, because modern life teaches resistance. Fight decline, deny limits, hold on longer than we should. But her life suggested another path. Yield early, adapt often, preserve what matters, release what is not. Longevity, in the end, was not added years. It was fewer fractures, fewer internal battles, less fear shaping each decision. She did not conquer time. She aligned with it, and alignment carried her further than struggle ever could. What her story also reveals is the cost that extended life placed on the people around her, not a burden they resented, a complexity they had not prepared for. Grief anticipates an ending. It prepares the heart for absence. When absence keeps failing to arrive, grief has nowhere to deposit itself. It circulates unresolved. Some of those around her felt a kind of sustained tenderness that had no appropriate outlet. Love sharpened by gratitude, but also weighted by the knowledge that every additional year was also closer to the final one. She sensed this. She addressed it not with words, but with the same quality of adjustment she applied to everything. She made herself easier to love at distance. She asked for less. She offered more. She understood that her continued presence placed demands on others, that her eventual absence would eventually release, and she held that understanding lightly, without resentment, without performance. That is perhaps the least discussed aspect of extreme longevity, what it asks of the people who remain alongside it, and how some people, through the same quality of adaptation that extends their own life, manage to make their continued presence a gift rather than a weight. She was one of those people, and the second 90 carried its own kind of wisdom, not the wisdom of knowledge accumulated, the wisdom of self-trimmed to its essentials. So what do you think? Are we repeating the same mistake again? The question her doctors could not answer was the wrong question. They were searching for a mechanism, a biological explanation that would make the outcome reproducible, something that could be extracted, bottled, and administered. What they encountered instead was a practice, not a medical practice, a practice of attention, of noticing what the body asked for and providing it without argument, of noticing what the mind needed and arranging for it without drama. She was not exceptional in her biology. She was exceptional in her responsiveness. That responsiveness is not genetic. It is not unique to her circumstances. It is a quality of relationship with one's own experience that can, in principle, be developed by anyone willing to pay the kind of attention to themselves that she paid effortlessly. The effortlessness is the misleading part. It did not look like discipline from outside. It did not look like practice. It looked like personality, like something she simply was. But What looked like personality from outside was most likely a habit so deeply established, it had become invisible even to herself. The habit of asking, continuously and without judgment, what this moment required, and then, as best she could, providing it, not perfectly, not always, but consistently enough that the body never had to fight its own caregiving for too long. That is the explanation no one found in the charts. Not a gene, a gesture repeated across decades until it became a life. She